Welcome to Smart Branding, a podcast dedicated to branding, naming, and domain names. I'm Tatiana Bonneau, and with my guests, we try to help you create and grow strong, memorable, and meaningful brands online. I believe time is one of our most precious assets, and so I want to thank you in advance if you decide to spend the next 30 minutes with us. I promise to do my best to make those worth it. Let's go. So today we have a special guest, Zacharias, or Zach. That's how you kind of refer to yourself, isn't it? Voulgaris. He's an experienced data science professional who is currently working on launching his own startup. Zach has a wealth of knowledge and expertise in information systems, data analysis, and artificial intelligence. Thank you for making the time, Zach. Nice to have you here with us.
Thank you, Tatiana. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with a bit of a background. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what did you do before you got to where you are today, and then we can talk a little bit about your startup.
Mm-hmm. Well, I started as a student of engineering and management in Greece, where I'm from. Then I specialized in IT, specifically information systems, and also with a lot of emphasis on the technology side. So I wasn't like a high-level technologist, but very hands-on. And then I did a PhD in what came to be known as the field of the future, data science, with a focus on machine learning and information systems in that area. And after that, I went into the industry, starting from the research industry in Georgia Tech, then into various companies. And at one point, I started venturing into the startup world. And now I'm in this startup that is in the Netherlands. And we're looking into putting all these great ideas and knowledge that we have accumulated into something practical that everybody can benefit from.
Wonderful. And how much can you share about that? Because it does sound like, given your experience, and especially, I'm sure for you, having been in the field of technology and machine learning, everything that we're seeing recently with artificial intelligence is not as amazing and surprising because you've been watching it closer than we are, because most people are just like going, wow, that's amazing what it can do now. But still, that's quite exciting time. So yeah, what would your startup do, if it's not a secret, obviously?
No, actually, we have a public website. We haven't started promoting it aggressively yet, but it is an application on the phone that allows people to connect and socialize over running. So it brings runners together, basically, either in a social or a competitive manner, to help people connect, because many people like to run, but they also find that socializing through running is even more rewarding than running itself, or it helps them keep themselves accountable to running. So it's very hands-on, very non-tech, but there's a lot of technology in the back end and a lot of data science work happening behind the scenes.
That's cool. I'm actually a runner. I do mainly trail running, but it's still running. I use Strava. So how does that... how does it differentiate from what's out there currently for like managing your training?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you mentioned Strava, because that's one of the most popular trackers, and we're very fond of it. Many of our users use Strava and other trackers, which are very great in what they offer. But what they do offer is more like a way to gauge your progress and understand better your solo training. They don't do much on the social side of things. And although it is a very amazing database they have developed, and the insights that come from it every year that they publish on their website are very interesting, they're not really helping the user connect with other users. And whether it's running or hiking or whatever services they track, they don't go to the extra step, that extra mile, if you will, that other companies try to do. And our startup is one of those companies. And I feel that there is a need there, because metrics are great, but not everybody cares about the metrics, first of all. And also, sometimes you just want to unplug, and if you have a tracker like this, although it may measure useful things to help you understand your training sessions, they may not always bring about something human in the picture. I believe that with an app like ours, we can bring that human element and emphasize it and use technology as a supporting tool.
That's very curious. And that's true. They don't have, there are, I think the closest you get on Strava is like you have groups and clubs, but I doubt anybody really uses those things. Like I haven't myself, they're just hanging there. It's a very interesting point you raised there, that we talk a lot about artificial intelligence and machines replacing humans, and you're talking about using those to actually bring forward human connection, which you feel is missing from the just purely data oriented apps and software and activities that we have. How did that come along? How did you get to that as your focus, as your mission?
Well, I have to say I didn't have to do that much on the mission side of things. I joined the startup after they already had a lot of work done. So there was already an app that was in test flight mode on the iOS, and it was still a kind of test flight equivalent on Android. So there was already something in place that you could actually download and check out for yourself. So the mission was done by my co-founder and his team primarily. So when I joined, there was already something in place, but I did contribute and continue to contribute, and hopefully will contribute even more on the data side of things, because it is a data heavy application.
And how is the artificial intelligence and data in that case helping, shall we say, that social side?
It helps in various ways. First, there are like insights in the form of different metrics, and of course, there are graphics attached to them as well, and also in matching the users.
Oh yeah, that obviously, yeah, that definitely. I didn't think of that. Wonderful. And what's your experience in because obviously that application is focusing on, and I love the way that you worded it, where using technology to effectively enhance the human connection as opposed to replace it. How do you, or in your experience, how do you see that playing out in other fields of technology? Do you feel that that's kind of the way to go, or do people have some because a lot of people are, like I mentioned earlier, scared of, okay, that's gonna take our jobs, technology is gonna replace us, it's gonna pull us further apart from each other. Where do you feel it's the future?
I think it's going to be a combination of both, because technology itself is neutral. It's not like AI is going to turn against us like we see in some sci-fi films. It's a useful tool, and it's getting more and more sophisticated, and it can offer more value potentially. The thing is that who controls that technology, and to what end? Because you can use it to automate a lot of different processes, like it is already done in various companies, and basically remove the human workers from the loop. Or you can use it to enhance the human experience and create value for many people, thereby creating new products and services that would not exist or would not be feasible financially in that regard. So you see that with many novel projects nowadays, many startups look into that. So it depends on how you use the AI, and it's really up to us to some extent as consumers of the AI to say, okay, we're going to vote with our euro and say, okay, I'm going to promote or help this particular project because it uses AI in a benign and beneficial way, instead of going to the gigantic companies of the past that use AI in a more restrictive way.
Absolutely. I think that's a very important point, and not just in technology, in everything. And I'm glad to see that more and more people are being more conscious about how they spend and where they spend. I was talking to a guest recently about looking at, I have 4 kids, and one of them is 18 soon. And I'm looking at how he's shopping, and it's really a good insight into how this generation, how young people are so much more aware than we ever were of how important it is. Like you said, exactly, you vote with your wallet effectively. It's really important. Let's talk a little bit more about your startup. Talk to me about the brand, the name, the domain name you chose. How did that come along, and how is it working for you?
Well, I didn't have much or anything rather to do with that name or the brand, but I did like it from the very beginning, and I found it very intuitive. It's One2One, all letters except the 2 part.
I can. So our listeners can see that, but I see it over. It's cool.
Yes. You see, even dogs get excited about the name.
Yeah, that's when you know you got it right.
Exactly. And the dot run part, I think, is also very good because it really captures the whole idea of what the company is about in one URL that is fairly easy to remember, I believe. And as an app, it I think distinguishes itself because there are not that many with that name. It's very easy to find. Well, if you search for specific games, for example, that have a name that everybody else is using or something similar, good luck finding that particular app. So I think the branding is really well done, and of course there can always be improvements, but it's something that doesn't require too many follow-up questions.
Yeah, that's always a good thing. That's always a key where yeah, you have a name that gives an idea of what the company does. It's easy to remember, doesn't restrict you to anything too narrow, which I often see in my field of work where people, I mean, you had your dog now, so it makes me think like if you launch a business that's called something dog collars and then you decide to expand to different products, then you have a problem. So, and on what stage you said you joined the company recently? It's been in testing before that. So, what stage? Where are you now? What's the most exciting thing about what you're doing now?
Well, now we're taking a small step back to explore how the whole thing can be refactored in a way and improved by getting more in touch with our users. So, we recently launched a survey across the world because it's an app, so it doesn't have a specific location in the world. Although probably it's going to be promoted in one country first and then the others. But we found that there are certain patterns across different users from all over the place. And we're looking into how we can improve the app and make it more relatable to the users, more something they would care about more. Because not everybody cares about the metrics as we think. And not everybody cares about this habit of tracking the metrics all the time. Sometimes you just have a bad run and that's it. It's okay. And it should affect how you feel. And sometimes even a bad run is better than no run. But if you really focus too much on the metrics, you may lose that. And that actually also running the risk of going to a tangent here. But this also illustrates that there are different kinds of runners. Not everybody is all about the metrics and passionate. But there are other people who are more mindful runners, for example, or people who run for a specific objective, like weight loss. So we try to cover different aspects of what the user wants and understand the users better. So that's why it's very exciting. It's not just a technological project, but it's something that really relates to the people. There's a strong UX side, for example.
I'm definitely. I mean, I'm actually thinking I'm gonna go and have a look at it after our call because I'm definitely interested in. Obviously, as a runner myself, but I can absolutely agree with you that there's so many different types of runners and it's not at all the same, and it's I feel where really the social element and what you mentioned, matching users, can really play well is that whatever type of runner you are, you obviously, whether you know it or not, you're better off with somebody who you can bounce off and you can train together, whether it's virtually or in the same location, and it really helps if that somebody has similar ideas, similar objectives, similar way of reasoning of why they run. And then that's something that's not I don't see that. I can think of somewhere where that's reflected in an existing application. And I'll give you my turn to run on off tangent, but I'll give you an example. I've been running for a couple of years now in my club here locally in Monaco, or in our trail club. And there wasn't another woman. I'm the only one. And only recently there was another girl that joined, and it really was like a really different experience for me. Like, it's so much more motivational, and like I enjoy it so much more that I'm not the one who is always behind, or I have my training adapted and I'm the only one doing something different from the rest. And it really makes a difference. And I can totally see, like, that's me with a coach in a club, and if I was on my own, that's even harder when you're doing it on your own.
Yeah, and I'm glad you touched on the point of clubs, because we're also attempting to integrate that more communal aspect of running. So we'll be limited only to pairs of runners, but also bigger group. And it can be like 3-4 runners, but it can also be like a bigger group depending on the event. So it's really the sky that is the limit in this case. There's so many options, and there's so many social aspects to running. other than just the running itself. So the socializing afterwards, for example, and the different equipment that you may get to improve your performance in running and make the whole experience more healthy.
Definitely. That's something, the equipment, I've been amazed Strava hasn't done something about that, because with the data they have, they're probably doing enough of just selling that data. I'm not sure. I don't know how they're using that information, but they could do a lot more, not even on the side of obviously they can earn money. I'm just thinking to make life easier for the people that are using the app, with the information that they have, with the fact that they literally, they on my watch, they have everything about me, and they don't have something that will say, oh, those shoes, they like, you should change them. It's been whatever kilometers you've run with them, or there's a promotion of whatever and you like that brand, so maybe you should. It's just, like I said, sky's the limit on that, and there's a lot to do. It's an exciting project.
Yeah, of course. And I completely understand where Strava is coming from, because they have to also abide by GDPR and other privacy related legislation. So, you can do lots of things, but at the same time, you have to keep in mind that the user is not your product. They are the user, and you should treat them as a product. So privacy is definitely something to be factored in the whole matter.
Yeah, talking on that, the privacy obviously is one. What challenges have you faced in your startup? I'm sure that will be interesting. Like you said that before that, if I understand correctly, you were more like you had positions in different companies, and that is the first time you're actually in a startup as a founder, in a founder's position. So what are the most you feel common challenges you have faced so far, and how did you deal with them?
Well, first of all, is the remote thing, because I have worked remotely in the past, but it's very different when you have a specific role and you have gotten accustomed to your team and your collaborators. And, if you work remotely a few days, it's all right. It's not very difficult. But here I started on the remote from day one. So even though I knew the co-founder in person from the accelerator program we met in, I didn't really have a chance to work with any of the people in the team face to face, and that has been a challenge. Although I enjoy working remotely, and I think it's a great way to keep things much more efficient and more sustainable in a way. But beyond the remote thing, there's also the matter of wearing a lot of hats, and that's something I have done in the past in Microsoft, because as a program manager there, you have to wear lots of hats. Like you are a kind of versatilist, if you know, if you're familiar with the term.
Yeah.
So in a startup, you have to be like that as well. Like it's not a nice to have, it's a necessity, especially in the founding or co-founding role. And, at one point I may have a meeting with a developer, and then I have to have a meeting with the UX, and then have to go back to the data, because everybody is very hands-on in the team. So it's not something that you can lock in a small box in your mind and say, that's it. Okay, that's my role. That's what I do, and everybody else is just an outsider. There are no outsiders in a startup, and I think that's one of the strong points of a startup, because not only do you learn lots of different things by wearing all these different hats, but also you get to empathize better with the different professionals. Like I had no idea, for example, that UI work was so hard until I saw how UI people work and the programs they use, and how it's not so simple as you put these features there and they magically appear.
Yeah. I can totally relate to that. One from my own experience, exactly with the same, where I've been a project manager for quite some time before I got into launching my business, and I was kind of in the intersection of clients, managers, designers, programmers, and it's been like so hard to make those connections, to translate those things, because everybody thinks the job of the other one is so much simpler for some reason. Everybody's like, oh, just move that thing over there. Like, why can't you just move it over there? Just make it red, And it's funny, you mentioned that you had no idea that, your job was so difficult. I had a guest recently who had a similar experience, where he had a lot of, positions in different companies. And now that he started his own business, he was saying how I thought like marketing people, and designer people, they just walk around drinking coffee. and when he spent like days and days and days working on just getting a logo, and he was like, we are on our third logo now. He was like, okay, I understand that's a serious job. That's not, they're not just walking around drinking coffee. So yeah, I think the walking around drinking coffee stage is over once you're a founder.
Yeah, and the same holds for the tech positions as well. Like a developer is not like someone who just sits in front of the computer enjoying himself or herself doing coding, because it's not really the code that's the hard part, but addressing specific requirements using that code and making sure that code is good but not perfect. Because if you spend so much time making the perfect script for a specific feature, then you may not have enough time to do other features. And in startup, things are changing so rapidly, so you don't really need to have this perfect code anyway.
That's another thing, that reminds me of my days in programming and IT and all that. That was something that at some point I was so tired of trying to explain to people, that because like a programmer can sit there for days and you don't see something happening, and people want to see something happen. It's like, what has been doing? Like, it's been 3 days, I don't see anything changing on that software or on that website. And at some point I was just like, I got to a point where when we were even discussing features stage, like I would know what takes time and what doesn't take time, and what people on the other side, when they see, they can say, oh, that looks amazing, that must have taken a lot of time. And it's actually very simple. But I used to do that and sort of feed that feedback based on how people would feel about what's taken time, as opposed to what really takes time to the programmers, because like you cannot match those if you realistically say, oh, it's been 5 days and you can't see anything. But it's actually a huge amount of work done.
Exactly, yeah. And sometimes you do something very simple, as you said. Like recently I did a project to analyze some text and do some exploratory data analysis on some text responses for this survey I mentioned. And it didn't take me more than an hour to have something to show for it. And for me, that was something trivial. Like, it didn't really, it's not something that you would put on a resume, even that you know how to do a word cloud. I mean, everybody can do that, especially if they know about text analytics. But for some people, I mean, this is more insightful than making a very fancy script to analyze numeric data, which may be really hard, much harder than it looks. And in the end, you just end up having a small graph about it, small graphic. Which is not that impressive to start with, but the word cloud may be more impressive because of the colors and the shapes and how it's very easy to interpret.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess it comes down to, as it often does, to bring it back to marketing and branding, to knowing your audience and what they would appreciate.
Yeah. And I think that's something that every company, especially startups, need to work on, because it's easy to get infatuated with an idea, saying, look, I have this amazing product or service that I'm going to develop or I'm developing. But at the end of the day, if there is not a strong pain point, what's the point? What's the point of developing an amazing application if nobody's going to use it? And that's something that is iterated in this, Bible of sorts in the startup world, the lean startup, where Eric Ries talks about the importance of connecting with the users and really making something of value to them.
Absolutely. And that's been something that we oftentimes touch on the podcast. And it's, I guess, indicative of how important it is that with guests from different fields, different areas of expertise, different industries, we do end up to that same point of you have to communicate as early as possible to your users and get that feedback, instead of working on that brilliant idea with gazillion features that you might just like talk to 10 people and find out that's not at all what you think. And that's something that people get oftentimes wrong. And it's funny because it's one of the things I hit as a problem very, very early, when I was still like coming up to, my son is going to be 18. So that was about then, when I was working at selling websites effectively to people, creating and selling websites. And there was that huge problem of people going, but I like this and I like that and I want it to be like that, and trying to get to them, but it's not about you. and it's a very, very similar thing that you see across the board in so many different ways and industries and fields, that people forget that it's about the end user. It's not about what you like and what you feel about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great. Well, we can end up on, I guess, two things more. Where are you going with your startup? What's cooking for next year? That's one. And where can people reach out to you?
Well, I'll start with the easier question, which is you can reach out to us on the one2one.run website. And also we have a strong presence on Instagram, so you can reach out to us through that. Well, for next year, we have lots of different things in the works. I don't think I can talk about all of them, but let's just say that we're looking at making the whole app much more user-friendly and much more useful to everyone who wants to take up running or is already running, or sometimes they run, sometimes they don't, like the on-off runners, as we call them, because everybody can benefit from running. And sometimes you just need that extra push, which can be something as simple as a simple app. It doesn't have to be something too super fancy. You don't have to invest in a high-tech tracker. You don't have to invest in the latest gear either. As long as you just summon the motivation to get out there and run a bit and connect with other people through that, I think that's enough to keep people in the habit, or develop the habit if they don't have it.
Definitely. Yeah, I can totally agree with that. And it's very funny how it's important what you said, that you just people need that little push to just start. And then very quickly, it kind of does its work on its own. You start like feeling the benefits. It start getting to be a habit, and the social element there is very important. That's something that really can keep you motivated and gives you that responsibility as well.
Yep, that's very important.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, I'm wishing you all the best. I'm going to be watching where you're going. I'm going to check out the app actually for myself after our interview. And thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, and I look forward to seeing more episodes of your podcast.
Thank you for joining us in this episode of Smart Branding Podcast. Feel free to visit smartbranding.com for more information and reach out if you have any suggestions, questions, ideas, or just want to learn more about how a good domain name strategy can help you build a strong and successful brand. See you next time.